News at 10 on TV 20 Detroit starts right now.
A Detroit disc jockey who spent nearly 40 years on the radio stabbed to death. John O'Leary's body discovered at his home in Highland Park yesterday afternoon.
Working for you. Fox 2 News at 10 starts now.
Tonight, a longtime Detroit disc jockey is dead. Police finding the body of John O'Leary in the backyard of his Highland Park home over the weekend.
He had been murdered. A suspect already under arrest. Tonight, those who knew John are remembering him as a kind and talented man.
You know, he was the sweetest guy. I mean, like, on his own level, sweet.
He's been a fixture on Detroit radio since the 70s. John O'Leary started as one of the original WABX air aces, working at multiple radio stations, playing rock and roll and connecting with listeners.
Local 4 News at 11 starts now.
And he's been a voice on Detroit radio for decades. Tonight, the radio community is in shock after longtime DJ John O'Leary is found murdered in his home. Topping our report tonight at 11, his body was found in his Highland Park home over the weekend.
O'Leary spent nearly 40 years on the air in Detroit, starting at W4 and winding his way through most of Detroit's big-time radio stations in an era when they produced some of the biggest names in the industry.
He was good enough to go from station to station to CSX to W4. He built a reputation in this market as just a great lover of Detroit music and a great Detroit personality.
O'Leary, one of the original air aces at the legendary WABX.
He was on the ground floor of what they used to call underground radio, progressive rock radio.
John's long tenure meant he knew everybody. It is an unfathomable end for a man who was known for his kind heart.
And he was very low-key. He didn't get in the way. He was not what they call in the business, and believe me, I know lots of people that are high maintenance. He was not high maintenance, and that's what made him so popular.
Back here live, so what could have possibly motivated a crime like this? Well, we expect more details out of Highland Park PD and the prosecutor's office when this suspect hits their arraignment, likely tomorrow or Wednesday.
This is the Church of the Dock of Rock, Doug Podell. Yeah! First off, I know it's going to be emotional. It already is for me tonight, but thank you all for coming out here this evening for this John O'Leary Memorial. Would you please give yourselves a round of applause? I really appreciate it. I know it's tough on a Sunday, up against NFL, up against the weather, but we're all here to show our love and our support for the late John O'Leary. John and I go way back into the mid-'70s. We worked together at 4 radio stations, at ABX, W4, at the original Wheels, and CSX. And he was just working on a new podcast about Detroit rock radio history. And he was very excited about it. We had dinner with my wife and I and John and his friends. And I knew that he was excited, and I knew that he felt like he was back on track. And unfortunately, as you all know, the sad situation that happened after. And that's why tonight we felt that it was important that we put an exclamation point on his life. Yeah. We have lost many radio friends throughout the years, and we've all memorialized them differently. But this one just felt like it needed a bit of a little extra push. So here we are tonight at the Token Lounge. Myself, along with Brian Major and Roger Berghoff. Please give them a great round of applause. Have worked pretty tirelessly over the past few weeks to put this event together. We didn't exactly know how to get started or where to get started or what we were going to do, but this is the end result of all of that, and I feel pretty good about it. We have an auction this evening. All of the money, by the way, is going to be donated to Oxford Charities. As some of you know, John O'Leary was actually the hockey announcer, along with Roger Berghoff, for the Oxford High School hockey team. And he did that for a number of years. And when that tragedy happened right after his, that was the spark that really led us to this event tonight. So there's an auction. The ticket sales were a part of that, so that, one, you could be assured of getting in, and two, so that you would be able to donate to the event. We have Gary set up over here with some merchandise, some of the early stuff of ABX. So if you need a remembrance of that, you can do that as well. There will be some food provided a little later on from Angelo's Italian Restaurant in Westland. And I especially want to thank John Anton and John Bobby from the Token Lounge for donating this facility for tonight and this date. And I'm sure there's going to be many radio personalities that will be coming up that you'll all know and recognize and are friends with that will tell their stories about John. But before we move on, I just want to tell my one story. I have many. I was his program director at 2 different stations, so we had a lot going on. But when John and I actually bonded was at W4. It was probably around 1978. He had since left ABX and had joined W4. I was there, he was there, and we were there together at night, just wrapping up my show around 10 p.m. So we decided to go smoke a joint out on the rooftop of the W4 house on Jefferson Avenue. And the only way to get on that rooftop was to go through a bathroom window on the upper floor. So we went through the bathroom window, we went out on the rooftop, and about 3 tokes in, the window slammed. And it slammed so damn hard and so damn tight that we could not lift it. So, of course, I'm still on the air, so it's my responsibility to get back into the building. So John kicked the glass in. And, of course, I took the fall the next day. We stayed around and cardboarded the window up, and then the next day I came to tell the general manager what I had done. And John was very appreciative of the fact that I didn't drag him into the fray. And from that time on, really, for 30 years later, we were best friends. So tonight, we'll remember one of the great legendary Detroit disc jockeys tonight, John O'Leary. I know I have a bit of a script here to follow, so we're going to bring on one of his childhood friends. Would you please welcome one of John's close and childhood and earliest friends, Greg Young.
John and I were both born in July of 1954. In 1956, in the spring, my parents moved to 8210 Chalfont, which was 4 houses down from John. Now, I don't remember exactly meeting him for the first time because we were just toddlers, and we probably did what toddlers tend to do, just stare at each other. But I probably have known John longer than everyone here, and there's a lot of good memories. We, of course, played all the time. We did not go into kindergarten together. We were so close all the time that our parents decided they wanted us in separate classes to maybe meet other people. But after school, we were back at it. We did the typical kid stuff, played Army, played with our Tonka trucks. What else? When I said play Army, that was full and with our little green Army men. I remember we built a fort in John's garage up in the rafters. There's something about little boys in forts, so we did that. Later, we discovered baseball, of course. We tried out for the Little League. John made it. I didn't. That's okay. One of the earliest memories, though, and I think this was before we even started school, John and I were fighting over a pair of golf clubs, playing tug of war. I finally gave a mighty yank, and I yanked it out of his hand, and he came after me to get the golf club back. I raised it up and just conked him hard in the top of his head. So, later as he grew up, we kept talking about that, and we finally laughed about it. And John claimed that totally traumatized his developing childhood brain and was so debilitating. As he grew up, he realized that there would only be one thing he could do in life, and that was to become a disc jockey. So you can thank me for leading John to the path of the radio. We did play radio. His older brother, Tim, had an actual functioning AM studio in the basement. I'm sure it was totally illegal. But we would go down there and play. And local cars within a few hundred feet would pick it up. We discovered, of course, rock and roll together. Played other stuff besides baseball. Well, he was really into baseball and hockey. I could never figure out how to ice skate, so I didn't do much hockey with him. I remember playing Man from U.N.C.L.E. with him, and we would fight over who got to be Napoleon Solo and Ilya Kuryakin. Elementary school, we got into trouble together, of course, all the time. We moved in '68, but John and I always kept in touch and saw each other frequently. As we grew up, I used to keep his cars on the road, his old clunkers. By day, I'm actually a technician at Detroit's Ferrari dealer. So he used to always kid me about moving from Ferraris down to the junkers that he drove. And I always told him, well, at least I'm not going to get a speeding ticket in one of your cars. So I don't do Facebook, but I know he did. And I know he had a real hard hatred for Donald Trump, which I shared. And we would joke about, we kind of wish the guy would just have a stroke and die. We also agreed that George Harrison was our favorite Beatle. We bonded with that. Can't think of much more else. I know when he was on the stations, he would always give me the phone number that they would answer in the studio that regular people couldn't call. and he would play my request up until program directors kind of dictated what was played, and he couldn't do that any longer. And of course, every fourth song had to be Bob Seger. But up until then, he would play whatever I called for, and I'd even visit him in the studio every now and then, and kept quiet when he was talking. I always kidded him that I was going to, let out the F-bomb or something, but I never did. And he was thankful for that. I guess that's about it. Every July 4th, I would call John to wish him July 12th, I would call John to wish him a happy birthday, and on the 15th, he would call me to wish me a happy birthday. And it's sad that that's not going to happen anymore. He was a wonderful guy. I know he just loved doing what he did. He was just enraptured with the whole scene of radio in the rock and roll world, in the local radio. And it's a terrible loss, of course, without being said. I think that's it. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Greg. Of course, we have bands tonight. Mob Opera will be coming up real soon, and then they're going to close it out. We have The Look here tonight. C. Dick Run will be playing tonight. Vinny from Sponge will be doing an acoustic set tonight. And we also have a tribute to Johnny Cash because apparently, something I didn't really know, John was a big fan of Johnny Cash. We also have our first video that we're going to show you tonight.
I would think around 10, 11, or 12 years old. Before I hit puberty, I was already recording newscasts on a little reel-to-reel tape recorder that everybody had back if you were born as long ago as I was. At some point, around the age of 10 or 11, I pretty much knew that I was going to do one of two things, either meteorology, which later I realized required a lot of college. And I'm not that smart. So I thought, well, maybe not that, or radio. But around the time of 11 or 12, I was starting to get into radio. I remember the only time I ever called a radio station was to talk to Joel Sebastian, who's passed on now. And this was back in the Wixie days, 1270 AM, WXYZ, doing Top 40. And that was my first experience with radio, was hearing Top 40 radio. And I called Joel Sebastian because we wanted to have a birthday party. I had no clue what was involved in getting a disc jockey to come out and do a party for you. I was a little kid. It was never going to happen, right? But I talked to Joel, and he was a nice guy. He was very pleasant to me. I remember that. Don't remember the conversation. But I think at that moment, that was probably the moment when I realized I might like to do this for a living, Later, when I found out you only worked 4 hours a day, I thought, yes, this is what I want to do for a living. To me, radio was always cool because nobody knew what you looked like. I have a face for radio, especially with the COVID thing going on and my teeth being worked on. I certainly have a face for radio now. But it was always the mystique of hearing that voice and wondering who they were and what they looked like. And back then, there was no internet. Really, people got to remember, there was no internet back then. For young folks, I know that's almost impossible to believe, but we had no way of going online and bringing up a picture of what Lee Allen looked like. You just never saw that unless you maybe got a top 40 thing, a list that you'd get in the, with the playlist that they put out back in those days, and they might have the disc jockey's face on the back of it. But it was all about who are these people? What are they doing? How does this work? And until I went to Specs Howard, I had absolutely, really no clue.
John O'Leary, a name that will live for a long time in the Specs Howard School. John was one of the first students that we had. Came into the school, all eager, as most students are, but he had certain effervescence about him, certain interest in being a success in the business. And what we were able to teach him, what he was able to give us as far as his enthusiasm, made him a star in the industry. We're proud of him, and we will miss him greatly.
Next, we have from the old Specs Howard School of Broadcasting, where pretty much everyone you'll be seeing here as a DJ tonight went to. Would you please welcome Elisa Z.
Good evening, everybody. As Doug said, I'm representing the Specs Howard School, but I'm also representing Mr. and Mrs. Specs Howard themselves, who are my parents. So I have known John. Thank you. Thank you very much. I've known John, wow, a lot of years, because back in 1970-something, I was working summers at the school as receptionist, and I'd get to meet, thank you, I'd get to meet all of the students who'd come in every single day. And so over the years, you can imagine I met a lot of people who would come and go and get their jobs, get their starts in the broadcasting industry. Most of them I've forgotten. Some, very few, I remained close with over the years, and we stayed in very close touch. And John, of course, was one of those. I do remember the very first day I met John, that day in the 1970s. He walked into the school over at 8 Mile and Northland Drive, and John cuts quite a figure, 9'12", 87 pounds dripping wet, right? So you would notice that regardless. But what I really noticed about John was he would come in every day with a huge smile on his face. And he'd always come up to me at the desk. And I mean, most students would stop. They'd say, "Hey, Elisa, hey, how you doing? How's everything going?" But John would not just stop and talk to me. John always talked with me. And he shared stories that always just dazzled and amazed. He had such a knowledge of the rock and roll industry and of music. And remember, I'm the daughter of a man who used to be a rock and roll disc jockey. Specs Howard took me to see the Beatles when I was 6. So I grew up in that. But man, oh man, I was intimidated by John O'Leary and his encyclopedic knowledge of music, of rock and roll. He was so laser focused on what he wanted to do. As you've heard from people speaking tonight, you heard from his own lips. Meteorologist or disc jockey, and we all say, I think, he made the right choice. It just seemed like it was yesterday that I had that first hello with John O'Leary. It also seems like too long ago, because we know we said our goodbyes too soon. You may have heard a saying when somebody passes, some people say, "May their memory be a blessing." And what that really means is when you're missing that person, when your heart is yearning to see them, when you want to turn on your radio and hear John's voice, through those tears and through the heartache, do something that you think might make him smile. Make somebody else's day. Share some tidbit about rock and roll with a stranger. Any of those things will allow us to let John's memory be a blessing together. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Daughter of Specs Howard, come on, you got to have some respect. All right, once again, I just want to remind everybody tonight that part of this is going to be a benefit to raise money for Oxford Strong. And I just want to remind everybody about the auction over here, because that's where we're going to make most of our money tonight. Most of our money will come from this auction. There are some nice items there: signed Alice Cooper CD, signed Ted Nugent, signed Romantics, some nice rock artwork and some baskets. Signed drumhead from Jason Hartless Jr. from the Ted Nugent Band. So we didn't go out and seek out giant items, but I wish that in your heart you would have a giant feeling for the auction and participate in it and take home a prize and at the same time donate. I see the merch table is doing very well, but we could certainly use a little extra action over at the auction. Thank you very much. Now we're going to get into our video, our next video. And then more guest speakers will be coming up, and then mob opera very soon.
Tell me about your first job in radio. You mentioned it was in Hastings. Talk about that experience.
I don't remember a lot of it. I was probably scared to death, the interview and everything, but I talked to the guy. And much to my surprise, he says, here. We went over to the teletype and he ripped off a few stories. They did news every half hour, I think it was. He said, here, go in the booth and do the newscast. That was my initiation into broadcasting. Oh man, I'm telling you, I don't remember, like I said, what I felt at that moment, but I gotta believe I was scared to death. I mean, the whole concept of this mic was gonna turn on and I was actually gonna talk to more people than the teacher at Specs Howard had to have run through my mind. I guess it went okay because he hired me. And in Hastings, Michigan, I did a split shift, 8 to 11 in the morning, 6:30 to 11 at night. I was Rockin' John. There was a guy named Rockin' Ron on DRQ, and I stole that right out. And I did Top 40 for about, I imagine, a year, close to it. And then I jumped right to Detroit. There was no medium market. I got a call from Dick Kernan at Specs Howard, and he said, John, there's a guy named Paul Christie, who is the program director at W4 in Detroit. And this is 1975 now. And he said, he's looking for somebody, and I thought of you, send him a tape. I always knew I wanted to be in Detroit radio, and I always suspected I would be in Detroit radio. I never doubted my ability to do that, maybe being naive or whatever, because I'm not arrogant. I didn't think I was the greatest thing since sliced bread on radio. Obviously, I'm brand new at it. But it worked.
Hi, I'm Karen Savelli, formerly from W4, WABX, WRIF, and WCSX, and I worked with John O'Leary at, all the stations except for RIF, but we always stayed in touch. We all started in the 70s. Back when we started in radio, the music was our main interest and our main love, but the social aspect was always really important as well. And John and my friend Sherry Gerard Rowe, who is sitting next to me, we called each other the Three Musketeers, and we hung around together since the 70s. And Sherry, we have some really great stories about all of our social activities we had with John. Do you remember any of those?
I do, but I'll let you say them.
Well, we had a trip over to Western Michigan at a concert at the US 131 Motor Sports Arena, or Motor Sportsway. It was an outdoor show, and Bob Seger was headlining and Hart was playing, and we all piled into a limo together and we drove over there and we had a great time. But we went to so many clubs once we got off the air. This was mainly at WABX, and Sherry would meet us at the station and we'd go out to clubs, see Eddie Money, see a lot of our local bands as well. And, of course, the concerts with the Jay Giles Band, the parties afterwards. And Eddie Money, of course, was one of the big, we were huge fans of Eddie Money, and John was very close friends with Eddie Money. And the last time the three of us went to a concert together, it was the Eddie Money show at Pine Knob back in 2013.
Yep.
And throughout the years, Sherry, John, and myself, we always got together, and when we did, it was the three of us, the Three Musketeers. What were we?
The Three Amigos.
The Three Amigos.
Always.
And I'm telling you, there's not a day that doesn't go by that Sherry and I don't think about John. And we miss you, and we love you, and thank you for letting us be a part of the celebration of his life.
Miss you, my friend. Love you.
Well, it was very difficult to hear about John O'Leary passing away, especially the manner in which he did. And I felt bad about that, of course. Last time I saw John, I was visiting Michigan last year in August, and he thought it would be a good idea to meet at Walled Lake, a place I hadn't been since Lee Allen had hops out there. How long ago was that? About 50 years ago, I guess. So I had GPS, I could find it, and I did, and we met, and Karen Savelli was there, and a friend of John's. We had a nice dinner. It was really nice to see him again. He's really fun to be with. And after we were done with dinner, we promised each other we would be in touch later in the week. And of course we weren't. And that was the last time I saw him.
It's a rarefied atmosphere in radio. And in Detroit, we were the 5th biggest market in the country back then. I think we're, 13th or 14th now, something like that. Being in a top 10 market back then, you had access everywhere. And then I got to know bands. I got to know the Jay Giles Band, good friends with those people. And I would go out of town, drive to concerts to see them.
John O'Leary, he sure knew how to have a good time. When the Giles Band would come into town, we'd take over the top floor of the Hilton Hotel. John would be there, and we'd go on for days on end. Sometimes he didn't even make it to work. Well, John sure knew how to house party. And in the tradition of New Orleans, we mourn the passing, but we celebrate the life. So here's to you, John, a real hard-driving man. Ooh, yeah!
Detroit Breakdown! Music is blasting. We're having a ball. Everybody in Boston, we're talking to y'all. People are flaming all over the place. They're tearing it up, blow out your face. Do the Detroit Breakdown. Motor City Shake. Detroit Breakdown. Motor City Shakedown. Jumping toe, everything goes. Hot summer night, I'm sweating right in my clothes. Bittersweet, the dancing feet. Everybody gonna get about me right in the street. Do the Detroit Breakdown. Motor City Shake. Detroit Breakdown. Motor City. Break it down now, baby. Come on. I'm getting crazy, and I don't care. I lost my nerve in my underwear. I went out dancing late last night. I saw something there that was out of sight. Detroit Breakdown, you doing it? Motor City Shakedown. Oh, Detroit Breakdown.
It's Ken Calvert, the Casual One, KC, and welcome to the Token Lounge as we celebrate the life of John O'Leary. I hired John O'Leary back in 1976, the summer of 76, and he got his wings. He was an air ace. He was finally alongside the great names like Dan Carlisle and Mark Perreno and Dave Dixon and Dick Tyne and Dennis Frawley and Hey Jim Sauté. Of course, Steve Dahl was actually doing morning radio back then when morning radio was not cool. We had a lot of great times, and the lanky one, boy, I'll tell you what, nothing stopped this guy from going to a great concert or an event. He was always there with that silver bullet band jacket on. Boy, that was one of his great keepsakes. He and I went different ways radio-wise. He ended up working at 4 different radio stations all together. I worked at too many to mention, which is never a good thing. But my fondest memory of John was being at WCSX when he would come blowing through the door, and he would have a grocery bag, and in that bag would be a huge bag of better-made red-hot barbecue potato chips, along with a 32-ounce jug of Coca-Cola. He would also have a loaf of Wonder Bread. He'd have a big stack of bologna and some cheese, and on the other side of that door was this gigantic sign that said, "There is no eating allowed in the studio." But John, we love you, we miss you, and you're gone way too soon. Godspeed, my friend. God bless you. And someday we'll all be together at that radio station in the sky that does indeed glow in the dark. I'd like to stick around, but I have another job. I have to work for a living. I do DoorDash, so I gotta say so long and hit the road. So long, everybody. Hit the button and say goodbye. by...
Greetings, people of Detroit. My name is Michael Halloran. I am sitting currently in a place called San Diego, California, where I've been for pretty much the last 30-something years of my life. And I got into radio because there's a guy called John O'Leary who we are here to celebrate today, the life and legacy of John. And it was John O'Leary that answered the phone at WABX back in the 70s when a young kid, me, I'd been going to school in England for, since 1970 at that point, and I was always calling him up and telling him about bands that I loved, like Roxy Music and Genesis, before Peter Gabriel left the band. And John basically at one point, said that, this music will never make it on the air. And then finally, when it started making it on the air, he kind of said to me, he goes, you're pretty good at picking this music, so why don't you just, go to Specs Howard, take these classes, and then learn how to do what I do. So I did, because John was not trying to get rid of me, but he was trying to encourage me to actually do something in radio. And if it wasn't for John O'Leary, I wouldn't be talking to you today. We became good friends over the years. He invited me in years ago to see the Runaways. They came in to do an interview at ABX. He knew I was a massive fan of the Runaways, and he basically said, why don't you come down when they're here? Fucking blew my mind. So I went in and I met them, and I don't remember where they were playing that night, but I was just fucking blown away with the kindness of that man. John O'Leary will forever be in my heart. He's the reason I got into radio. I'm glad you're here to celebrate him tonight.
John O'Leary. Just hearing his name makes me smile. And that was the reaction so many of us had whenever we saw him or whenever we talked about him. He was an amazing person, so filled with the ethos and the music of our era. What a tragic loss. I think now, though, that it's been a while since that grievous incident happened and just was so heartbreaking to all of us. We can think about the joy of having known John, being his colleague, listening to him on the air, being his friend. John O'Leary, we love you. We'll think about you always.
Wow, those are some star-studded celebrities right there. Peter Werby, Mike Halloran, Ken Calvert, Dan Carlisle. Talk about original ABX Air Aces. He was certainly one of them. The music will be coming here in just a minute. This is a memorial, so we have a lot of heartfelt speeches from people who knew John. But I do want to remind you that there is food for free. And it's available in the back. There are pizzas in the back, in the corner, and up front by the front door. So if you're hungry and you want to grab some veggies and some pizza, it's from Angelo's Italian Restaurant in Westland, so it's really good. Once again, I want to remind you about the auction, and we'll have that around 9:30 tonight. We will draw the winners for all of that. And Gary's got the merch table going over here with ABX merchandise from the past. And now I'd like to introduce you to a guy I've worked with at several stations. You know him and love him, Steve Costan, everybody.
How about a hand for Doug Podell, who's doing the yeoman task, keeping this thing going all night long. There's hiding places around here where artificial energy. No, that ain't happening. What a drag this is. When I got that phone call, I could not believe it. A lot of us have known John a long time, and the guy always kind of lived on the edge in certain ways. And you figured that, but we've all gotten to this point. Everything should be, pretty copacetic. And just terrible news brings us together tonight. John was an integral part of me getting started on the radio. He was actually, O'Leary's a friend of my younger brother. He went to the same high school, but I didn't know him. At Redford High, there was 5,000 kids and, cliques and all that kind of stuff. But I was down at W4 hanging out on a Sunday afternoon with Dan Carlisle, and he introduces me to the new guy. And in walks the lanky one, John O'Leary. And I said, hey, do you know my brother Jim Costan? Yeah, I do. And I said, well, I'm his brother Steve, and I'm trying to get into radio too. I was a certified nobody and certifiable at the same time out at WORB out at Oakland Community College. You know, we were just getting that thing going. John was just doing weekends on the radio and was trying to really capture that Detroit FM vibe that it makes Detroit rock radio so special, and was in the process of being coached by some of the all-time greats. You guys got, you know, Carlisle, you got Jerry Lubin. The late Jerry Lubin was a real big influence on John. John, I just need you to calm down and kind of talk to me like you're just sitting next to me at the bar and we're having a beer and just chatting. It'll be far out. It got more than far out as the years progressed. One of the highlights in the 1970s was when Detroit's own The Rockets finally played at Pine Knob. August 25th, 1979. They'd played around here a million times, over a 6 Mile Telegraph, all over the east side, of course, the red carpet. But when they got time to really headline at Pine Knob, their manager, Gary, decided to be a pretty good instigator and a pretty good diplomat with help from Punch. He got one person from each of the 3 radio stations, the rock stations, to introduce the Rockets. We're all going to go up and make nice at the same time. It could be great. It could be a train wreck. It was Arthur Penhallow from WRIF, me from W4 at the time, and from WABX, John O'Leary, who was always a big favorite of the guys in the Rockets. He followed him from day one. Many, many bands John had a lot to do with breaking in this town. And, of course, we all know all about the Jay Giles Band, who were already popular when John got on ABX, but he just kept it going in the true Detroit tradition. There's so much more we could talk about, but I just want everybody right now just give yourselves a big round of applause for showing up here tonight. Remembering John O'Leary. How about a big round of applause for John O'Leary, a true Detroit rock radio legend. He was. And in that same rockin' Detroit tradition, fast forwarding to tonight, 2021, downriver rockin', Detroit rockin', ladies and gentlemen, Mob Opera.
Let me be. No strings attached emotionally. Wanna get a little crazy, that's what they're playing. You bring the medicine and I'll bring the pain. You just wanna feel good like the doctor said. One good dose of love and it's gonna straighten out your head. Let's make love, the feeling is right. Just passing by like ships in the night. Wanna get a little friendly, there's no time like now. You bring the attitude and I'll throw you out. Anytime you're ready, anytime at all. Just come on over, you don't even have to call. On that you can rely. You got a prepaid reservation.
thank you guys so much, man. When we got asked to do this, all these boys up here, we all kind of grew up with John, listening to him in W4, WABX, and the first thing out of their mouths was like, fuck, yes, we will do this, no problems. And here we are. Fantastic. This next one here is kind of in the same era that John, we listened to him, 1975. This will take you back a little ways. Probably one of my favorite songs, probably one of you guys' favorite songs. Here's a little Head East. Check it out.
1, 2, 3, go!
Come on, get him in the air. Did you see any action? Did you make any friends? Would you like some affection before I leave again? 'Cause I've been running behind you since I've been able to see. There's never been any reason for you to think about me. Did you have any bad dreams? Did you break any flags? Would you be my companion? Is there even a chance? 'Cause I've been running in circles since I've been able to cry. There's never been any reason for ever asking me why. Yeah, yeah. Save my life, I'm going down for the last time. Woman with the sweet love is better than a white line. Bring a good feeling, ain't having such a long time. Save my life, I'm going down for the last time. Have you ever been lonely? Do you have any fun? Do you ever think of me? I'm just another one, yeah. You never give me no answers. You never tell me the truth. There's never been any reason for me to think about you. There's never been any reason. There's never been any reason. There's never been any reason. Save my life, I'm going down for the last time. A woman with a sweet love is better than a white lie. Don't you know she could bring a good feeling? Ain't having such a long time. Save my life, I'm going down for the last
Thank you guys so much, man. Appreciate it. This next song we're going to do here, and then we're going to turn it back over to our presenters. It kind of felt fitting for me to bring this one out now. And, you know, everybody has something happen to them, whether it be good or whether it be bad. And unfortunately, in this situation, it was bad. But I kind of found a way that helps me out when things go wrong. And if you maybe apply it to your situation, it might help you too. As long as you believe in yourself, as long as you believe in your friends, always have a little faith in the man upstairs. You can always roll with the changes.
Since you are able, and I am willing to make the break that we are on the brink of. My cup is
Thank you guys so much. Stay tuned for some great stuff.
All right, let's hear it from Mob Opera, everybody. They'll be back at the end of the show. We've got some good friends here. Chuck Santoni, who used to work at Wheels W4. Greg St. James is here from 89X and Wheels. And we all, it's kind of funny, we all have worked at all of them, but some of them mean a little bit more than others. Still to come, we have The Look coming up. Rock Harley as Johnny Cash. C. Dick Run. And Vinny from Sponge will be here as well. How about a round of applause for Vinny? He's been on tour. He's been recording. He wasn't sure if he could make it, but I had to put a little, twist of an arm, but it wasn't much. So we're very happy to have him here tonight. Actually, I want to thank all of you especially. We didn't really know, between myself, Roger, and Brian, just how many people were really going to be able to make it. But this is absolutely fantastic. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this. Don't forget about our auction tonight, and there is still plenty of free food from Angelo's. I told my W4 story about myself and John, but this one goes back to our early ABX days when I had just started in radio. I was only a part-timer. John was full-time. And we drove my car to the Toledo Speedway Jam. And I know it's going to sound like I'm some kind of pothead, but I only smoke pot here at the Token Lounge now. This is the only place. But back then, I smoked a lot of weed. And we smoked joints all the way to Toledo. John had the tickets, and most importantly, John had the backstage passes. It was my first official backstage pass. It was the Toledo Speedway Jam. I couldn't tell you to this day who played that show. But when we got there, the smoke billowing out of the car, we went directly backstage to a tent where he introduced me to his buddy, who I had never met before, and it was Eddie Money. So we're backstage with Eddie Money, and the first thing Eddie does is say, "Hey, Dougie, you want to smoke a joint?" And, of course, we didn't need much more. But I don't think we ever left the tent until Eddie came out on stage, and then we went right back in it. So, again, I really can't tell you who it was, but we had a great time. We had a great time together at that. It was like my first indoctrination into rock radio. And it couldn't have been with anybody better than with John O'Leary. He certainly knew how to party.
Was that with Hart playing and Jay Giles band?
Well, it might have been Hart and Jay Giles. Is that right? You might be right. So, wow, where are we? We're at our, I believe we're at our next video, everybody. So if you would, please turn to the screen, and we've got more of John.
Seeger used to fly me. They flew me to Boston for a show at the Garden, which was the second time I met Mark Perreno, who's an ABX Aries from the beginning. I remember we played softball against each other. Notably, people remember the Journey Riff ABX games. Those were the big ones. I think 5,000 people showed up one time for one of those. That's another thing. Getting to hang out with rock stars doing stuff like that. Who gets to do that? You know what I mean?
For those who don't know, what are you talking about? Softball games? Talk about that.
Well, what happened was Journey would come in and do 5 or 6 nights at Cobo because, that was the biggest venue in Detroit. What does Cobo hold? What did they hold? Like 14,000, I'm thinking? Yep. I was never good at guesstimating that. And they would come in. And during the day between one of the shows, or if there was a day off, because there was usually a day off, they didn't do 5 straight nights, we'd set up a softball game. And Riff would play ABX, and we'd divvy up the band in between the two. So it was in Royal Oak, or no, not Royal Oak. It was in, I believe, Oak Park. I'm going to get this wrong, the city. We used to do this a lot with Journey. We had several games, but in this particular one, it was the era of George Swell and Al Fowline. It was JJ and the Morning Crew were over at Riff, and they were just getting that ball rolling, and I'm over at ABX, and Arthur's on Penhallow, is on Riff, and I distinctly remember us calling each other on the phone and talking to each other on the air over the phone on both stations at the same time. Oh yeah, he's, hey, I'm going to kick your ass in the game, O'Leary, and I'm like, oh no, Art, that's not going to be happening.
Hey, everybody. Hey, it's me, Big Daddy Arthur P., paying tribute to a long-lost DJ who died suddenly and tragically, and we're all here to pay tribute to him. Back in the day when he was a young pup on WAVX, I used to call him when he had good ratings and make his day. And it made me feel good too, And I know it made him feel good. And hopefully everything is cool in his world now. He's rested in heavenly peace. All his brethren are here to celebrate him this evening, and it's going to be a knockdown, throwdown party at the Token Lounge. Baby!
Back in that era, I met everybody. All the rock stars went backstage to everything. That doesn't happen anymore. It's everything became a business. I like to use the term the fun police arrived. No more fun allowed, And it was a good move from a business point of view because you don't want all these disc jockeys and crazy people backstage before the show because, hey, the band's getting a buzz. You know what I mean? We were in our 20s. It was the 70s. You had to be there to understand it. But it was just kind of crazy.
All right, Motor City, it's the Motor City Madman, Uncle Ted reporting for duty. And you are all Motor City mad people because we are real music lovers, real heart and soul, piss and vinegar, fun, defiant, heart and soul, real music lovers. And a big salute and prayers for all the family and friends. In the wind, John O'Leary is still alive. What a great man representing that Motor City soul music celebration. What a great man. And we're all lucky to have known him. We're all lucky to have celebrated our beloved music together with a guy that so projected that spirit and that attitude. So I wish I could be there with you at the mighty historical Token Lounge. The Token Lounge celebrating a 50th anniversary too. But we should not be sad, except that John has gone too early and in unfortunate circumstances. But as I said in the Fred Bear song, and I think we all say when someone we love passes, in the Motor City wind, John O'Leary is still alive. Never forget that. We are the Motor City Maniacs because we really, really love and cherish and embrace and create the best music in the world. Thank you, John, and everybody in the mighty Motor City for continuing to keep that spirit and that attitude alive. Godspeed. I love you all madly. John, a great man forever.
Friends and strangers, good afternoon. My name is Jim McFarlane, and for the better part of 20 years, I covered radio and rock and roll for a newspaper in Detroit, so I had to know John O'Leary. And when I heard of his passing, the first thing I thought of, I'm sure many of you did, was when was the last time I saw John O'Leary? And I was blessed because it wasn't really that long ago. I was in Southfield, Michigan, researching a story on Specs Howard's 90th birthday for Our Detroit magazine. I was at the school talking to the great man himself, Specs Howard, who should amble down the hallway out of nowhere but John O'Leary himself. We hugged, we reminisced, we talked about the past, the present, the future. And above all else, above the great pipes, above the knowledge of music, above his long time in rock and roll in Detroit and elsewhere, John was just a great guy. He was just a great hang, a great man to be around, and I enjoyed his company very much. So let us all raise a glass today in his honor. I would love to be there with you today. I had planned to be there, but as you may know if you follow social media, my wife slipped on the ice and broke her foot a week ago today, so I couldn't really leave her wander around on one leg. So I am with you in spirit. Let us raise a glass in his honor and say, John, we miss you, my friend. Rock on.
I went into a Kroger's one time, and I think they were in the middle of some labor difficulties, and I walk up to the deli counter and order up a pound of salami. And the woman behind the deli counter slices a salami and puts it up on the scale and hits 1.00, not 0.99, 1.01, or 1.01, 1.00, and she goes, yes! And I always thought that was a thing of extraordinary, incredible beauty, because here she is. If you think I've thought about this, it always stuck with me, a woman who's cutting up dead animals for a living, for a union-busting outfit, and she had pride and passion in what she was doing. And I think about that when it comes down to John O'Leary. I mean, he was a rock and roll disc jockey from head to toe, and he had pride in what he did, and he had great passion in what he did. He never phoned it in. And what he got, I think, at all times, was that rock and roll was about energy. It was about adrenaline. It was about excitement. It was about passion. And he brought that to the table, brought it to the microphone every minute that he was on the air in those 6 radio stations that he was on. And I always was really respected him and admired him for that. It was interesting because he was not the kind of guy, the high-priced morning guy that would show up in Talbert's column a lot. He's a guy that came in and conveyed what he loved, which was rock and roll.
Hi guys, Dick Burton here, sitting here with my fisherman's hat. Anyway, I'm sorry to hear about John, obviously, just like everybody else. I didn't know John. I had never worked with John. But I heard, good things about him. And I heard this terrible tragedy of what happened. So I'm sorry about that, but I'm down in Florida now, freezing to death. And it's a little chilly. But it's time to eat, so that's a good thing. Again, very sorry to hear about John O'Leary. And in spite of it, I hope you guys are having as good a time as you possibly can.
John O'Leary loved music, and he loved radio, and he loved the people who were involved in both. I was able to speak with John back in November, shortly before the Rolling Stones came to town, and like many things with John, it became a conversation about much more than the Rolling Stones, and we spent the better part of an hour just catching up and talking to each other and enjoying the friendship we'd had for many years. I, like so many others, cannot believe what happened and that we don't have John and why we don't have John anymore. But John, you rest in peace and power, and know that any time we're listening to rock and roll on the radio, we're going to be thinking about John O'Leary. We'll never forget.
All right, hey, how about that round of applause for some of those very special people in Detroit giving us their time for John O'Leary. Once again, I'm Doug Podell from 106.7 WLLZ, Detroit's Wheels. And with me, I have my co-partner. She's here. She lives 1,000,000 miles away, and she has to be on the air tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. But she wanted to come out to say a few words about our old friend, John O'Leary. So would you please welcome, from the Drew and Mike Show, the Drew and Mike Podcast, Trudy Daniels, everyone.
Thank you, Doug. Thanks, Doug, for putting this all together. The guy's amazing. He does at least 10 things a minute. I appreciate all of you coming out in honor of John. It's great and solemn evening, but we celebrate somebody who was so good on the radio and gave us so many memories by just hanging out with him and loving the music and staying with it. And I appreciate all of Detroit. He helped build Detroit radio. So thanks, everybody, for supporting Detroit Radio, 106.7 WLLZ. Listen, and have a great evening.
And now we have somebody very special here tonight. Somebody that I've personally had the honor of working with on a few different benefits throughout the years, who was an original member of the Silver Bullet Band, and who has fought tragedy throughout his life, but never let him get in the way of his music or his attitude. Would you please give a great round of applause for one of the legends of the Motor City, Charlie Martin. Typical program, equipment problems. Hi, everybody. Everybody who is here.
Charlie, it's Doug. I'm going to move you.
Okay. Everybody always wants to push me around.
Charlie, it's love doing it.
Let's get this with court.
There you go, bud.
All right. As I was saying, I first of all want to thank everyone who came to this event. The circumstances are just beyond belief. Many people in the Detroit area, in all DJs, musicians, everybody involved in radio, everybody who was a fan, who listened to the radio, everybody loved John O'Leary. And I myself have been involved in numerous charitable events with him. A very positive, giving man. He was willing to give his time to anything that was worthwhile, like all of you are here today, giving your time. And I'm just, I don't know, the circumstances behind this, nobody to this day really knows the reason why this guy stabbed John. It turns out he wasn't a friend of John's. He was just somebody that John invited to live with him to share the rent, because John was having some financial problems at that point. So this guy didn't even know John. And, the only reason why he would do something as violent as stab John is probably money, John probably asked him for the rent or something, and the guy said, well, I don't have it, and blah, blah, blah. And then, anyway, who knows? It's one of those tragedies we'll see on whatever channel it is, the Learning Channel, horrible crimes that were never solved 40 years ago. Anyway, so again, thank you all for being here, and thanks to all the musicians who have agreed to play at this, and all the people behind the scenes who put stuff like this together. They never get the credit they deserve. Whenever you go to some big event, high school reunion or funeral or something like this, you don't stop to think how many people and how many hours are behind putting it together and making it all run smoothly, instead of having 1,000 people milling around looking at their shoes and bumping into each other. At least there's some organization to it. So thank you to Brian Major and people that worked with him. And, of course, the look. And right at this moment, I am going to give the look to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Love you, buddy. Oh, we're gonna rock. How about you? Don't you sit on your ass. Don't you be no fool. We're gonna rock. How about you? Don't need a class. Don't need no school, baby. They'll tell you this world's about to end. Well, who cares? Sit back, pretend, yeah. Gonna rock, how about you? Move with the beat, come on and dance in the streets. We're gonna rock, how about you? The music's exotic, feeling alright. Someday you'll make up your mind. You leave all your troubles behind.
you? Don't you sit on your ass? Don't you be that fool? We're going around. How about you? Don't need a class, don't need no school, baby. They'll tell you this world's about to end. Well, who cares? Sit back, pretend. Don't you be that fool, we're going around. How about you? Don't need a class, don't need no school, baby. Someday you'll make up your mind. Leave all your troubles behind. Going around, baby. Thank you very much for being here. This is for John O'Leary and Tate Meir and all the students at Oxford High School. Baby, do you understand me now? Sometimes you see I get a little man. Don't you know there's no one alive who can always be an angel? Things go wrong, you feel so bad. I'm just a soul whose intentions are good. Oh Lord, please don't let me. Baby, sometimes I get to be so carefree with a joy that's hard to hide. Then again, it seems like all I have to do is worry, and you're bound to scream out the side. I'm just a soul whose intentions are good. Oh Lord, please don't let me. I want you to know I never meant to take it out on you. Life has its problems, got more than our share. That's one thing I never meant to do, 'cause I love you. I love you, baby. Love you, yeah. Whose intentions are good. Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood. Baby, now don't you know that I'm so carefree with a joy that's hard to hide. Then again, it seems like all I have to do is worry. and you're bound to scream out the strike. I'm the stroke whose intentions are good. Oh Lord, just don't let me be misunderstood. I want you to know I never meant to take it out on you. Life has its problems, we got more than our share. That's one thing I never meant to do. I love you. Thank you very much. One more song. You can't sit down. One, two, three, four, pretty baby. Now don't you hear the drummer thumping? Come on and shake it like a crazy. Now cause I've been saying something. Everybody is a jungle. How about flip flop without never stop? Yeah. Move, 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 round and around, yeah. Love by five, way off the ground, pulling it down. Crazy sound, oh yeah. When you're in Westland. Everybody is a mover. Make it, break it, shake it, never stop. Move, 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 round and around, yeah. Way off the ground, pulling it down. Crazy sound of New York. I want to tell you a story. Every man ought to know. If you want a little loving, gotta start real slow. Just treat her right. Gonna love you tonight. Got to squeeze her real gentle. Drink as you can. Know you'll get a reputation. You're a natural man. If you just treat her right. Gonna love you tonight. Hey, hey, hey. One, two, three, four, pretty baby. Can't sit down. Don't you hear the drummer thumping? Can't sit down. Come on, shake it like a queen. Can't sit down. 'Cause the man is saying something. Can't sit down. Everybody is a jumper. Can't sit down. Hop, hop, flip, flop, if I'll never stop. Can't sit down. Can't sit down. Move, 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 round and around, yeah. Can't sit down. Can't sit down. Off the ground, putting it down. Crazy sound, know you. Can't sit down, can't sit down. Putting it down. Crazy sound, know you. Can't sit down, can't sit down. Whoa! Thank you, we love you, John O'Leary.
All right, everybody, one more time for the look. Come on. Doesn't get much more awesome than the look in Detroit. Thank you. And I know we all go back with the look, that's for sure. Thank you, Charlie Martin, for being here tonight. We certainly appreciate it. And coming up here, we have another video. But first, before we get to that, I'm going to move this on over and bring on an old partner of mine from W4 and Wheels and ABX. It's Chuck Santoni, everybody. Make some noise.
You didn't mention WAYN, Doug. Come on. Yeah, here in honor of John. And I'm probably not going to say anything different about John than a lot of other people have said already. I will tell you that John, as probably everybody else said, was a sweetheart, a true master at his craft, the broadcast industry, and John never had a bad word to say about anybody. Well, maybe a couple of people, but they deserved it. They did, yeah. I worked with John at WABX, 76 to 79. I worked with John as well at W4. Whoops, sorry. I'm stepping on people's cords. But one thing that I remember vividly about John, and I thought this might be amusing to you, is John loved to use his industry, being a broadcaster, to the hilt. And he would call it scamming heavily. And what that meant to John was every time I would come in to cross over with him, there would be a pizza box there. The guy ate dinner free every night because he was scamming heavily. So that's just one little anecdote about John. One thing that I found out about John when I was watching listening to the podcast known as Radio Days with Ron Chapman. No. Anyways. Robinson. Ron Robinson. Thank you. Was that John had a fondness for country music. I never really knew that. But it's a fact, and I guess he was fond of Johnny Cash as well. So in a little bit here, we will have Rock Harley along with Mob Opera to perform for you. So that's all I've got for you. Thank you so much for saying hi. I appreciate it. I'll give it over to Doug.
Thank you, Chuck Santoni. We're going to roll the video, and then we're going to bring on Rock Harley as a tribute to Johnny Cash.
I know I'm not the only one with pictures of John from over 40 years ago. He was around for a very long time. I do feel honored to have been his friend and confidant for so many years. I thank my brother Brian for putting this celebration of life together for John. Brian was there at the beginning, and now he's here at the end. John, I loved how you posted all our pictures on Facebook. Okay, over and over and over and over again, but still, it was fun to look back on the old days and see how far we've come. Now I'll think of you every time they come up in my memories. I remember when I first knew you and how I mentioned I had never been to Mackinac Island. So you said, let's go. We jumped in the car with your dog Dopey and rode to the UP over the Mackinac Bridge, bought some fudge, and came back. Never made it to the island, but we did go over the bridge. I remember those fun times we had, just out of nowhere. We made a pact that if neither one of us were married by the time we were 30, we'd marry each other and live happily ever after as the best of friends. I couldn't honor that when I turned 30 because I already had a future ex-husband at the time, but we did laugh about it a lot. I even have your promo picture from Wheels where you signed it to your future wife. And of course, who could ever forget your tenacity at not only taping my most embarrassing moment on national TV, but bringing out the VHS tape every time people came over to your house so they could see Sherry's on the Johnny Carson Show at my finest. In your memory, I am going to get a copy of that show and post it myself. I am still so very sad to know that I will never get another call from you or a message saying, hey Sherry, it's an emergency, call me back. Only to find out it wasn't an emergency, but just your way to get me to call you back faster for some question you need answered right now. I only wish you had made that call to me on the day you were murdered. Who knows what could have happened if you did. I'll keep this short as I'm sure there's many others who want to remember you as well. But after more than 40 years of our crazy ups and downs, I know you well enough to know you would have been blown away by all of this attention. You will be remembered fondly, not only by those who knew you, but by those who heard you, and by those whose life you touched. You always said, I had a special place in your life that no one else had, and you know you always had a special place in mine. I miss you, old friend. May your memory be a blessing.
John's death was a terrible thing. He was a good friend. He introduced my band 2 or 3 times last year, and it's a sad thing. He will be missed.
Probably never heard Ernie Harwell and John O'Leary in the same breath, but here it goes. If you think about Ernie Harwell for a second, Ernie sat up in a box and talked about a kid's game, baseball, but he did it with such integrity and such passion and such honesty that you had to respect the guy. And that's what it comes down to with John. I mean, he did it with such passion and integrity that my hat was always off to the guy. And I think about what's happened with the radio business, and he was a victim of this, but if you take some of these radio moguls who, their stock now is trading for $2 or $10 or $20 a share, and they get a few more bucks if they lay off a lot of people. You ask me about those folks who I would say, not to sound like a judgmental kind of guy, but I would say that they know the price of everything, the value of nothing, and I take one of those folks, sit him next to O'Leary, who knew the value and the beauty of rock and roll. I'd take O'Leary every time. And so, John, let me just salute you wherever you are. I have a lot of respect and a lot of admiration for everything that you ever did. And I just wish, I think I don't have to tell anybody in this room you can love radio, but radio's never going to love you back. And I think he deserved one hell of a lot better than he received. So, John, Godspeed.
Well, what can I say about John O'Leary? Such a wonderful broadcaster and such a kind person. That's what I'll remember the most. But let's go back to the 70s. That's when John and I both got our starts in the broadcast biz, in Detroit, our hometowns. How great was that? Now, we didn't get to hang with each other. Matter of fact, we didn't get to listen to each other because we were on different stations at different times. But we were both on the air, and that's when we got our start in broadcasting. I was also in the air. That's probably why you recognize my voice. I might have helped you out of a traffic jam or two over the years. But the thing that I'm going to remember most is my last get-together with John. First of all, for those of you who don't know, my late husband, Byron McGregor, got to know John when they both were working at WLLZ, one of their many stops in Metro Detroit and Windsor. And, of course, in Windsor at CKLW, the Big 8. At least Byron and John got to work together at one of their many stops on both sides of the border. This happened to be at WLLZ. And we both ended up being fans of John, and I never had the opportunity to meet him. And a lot of people think that everyone in broadcasting knows each other and kind of hangs with each other. That's not really the case. But I did have the opportunity and the delight and the pleasure of meeting John about 2 years ago. And unfortunately, way too short, he's gone now. We won't be able to hang together. But Byron and John will be up in that great big broadcasting station in the sky, and they're going to be having a good time together, reminiscing and having a lot of fun, and we will miss both of them. Rest in peace, John, my new friend, my dear friend. We all love you.
There is going to be a 50-50 auction. It's starting right now. It'll last 1 hour. And then at 8:30, we will draw the winner for the 50-50 auction. You still have a little bit of time to, if you're just coming on in, participate in our auction items. And there's merchandise over to our right with Gary over there with ABX merchandise and some Pine Knob t-shirts and things like that. So well worth checking out if you get a chance. Also want to thank once again Angelo's Italian restaurant in Westland for the food provided. How about a round of applause for Angelo's tonight? Those of you who had the pizza. And still to come, Greg St. James will be here. Scott Randall. Screaming Scott Randall. And right now, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring on Rock Harley and the tribute to Johnny Cash, everybody. Come on, make some noise.
How y'all doing out there? I'm glad to be here. God bless you all. I just want to say hello, I'm Johnny Cash. I hear the train coming, it's rolling around the bend. I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when. I'm stuck in Folsom Prison, and time keeps dragging on. But that train keeps rolling on down to San Antonio. When I was just a baby, my mama told me, son, always be a good boy, don't ever play with guns. But I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. When I hear that whistle blowing, I hang my head and cry. Oh, you boy. I bet there's rich folk eating from a fancy dining car. They're probably drinking coffee and smoking big cigars. Well, I know I had it coming. I know I can't be free. But those people keep moving, and that's what tortures me. prison if that railroad train was mine. I bet I'd move it on a little farther down the line. Far from Folsom Prison, that's where I want to stay. And I'd let that lonesome whistle blow my blues all away. I thank you so much. I thank God that I'm here tonight, because on the way to the bar tonight, I got pulled over by the cops. Said I was driving a little wavy, and I told them, I'm Johnny Cash. You know, I do a lot of shows for policemen and for veterans. And he said, well, I think I'm going to let you go. He said, by the way, where were you going? I said, to the Token Lounge. Well, that's when he made me walk the line. So that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to walk the line. I keep a close watch on this heart of mine. I keep my eyes wide open all the time. I keep the inside for the tie that binds. Because you're mine, I walk the line. I've heard it very, very easy to be true. I find myself alone when each day's through. Yes, I'll admit that I'm a fool for you. Because you're mine, I walk the line. As sure as night is dark and day is light, I keep you on my mind both day and night. And happiness I've known proves that it's right. Because you're mine, I walk the line. You got a way to keep me on your side. You've given me cause for love that I can't hide. For you I know I'd even try to turn the tide. Because you're mine, I walk the line. Okay, everybody now. I keep a close watch on this heart of mine. I keep my eyes wide open all the time. I keep the inside for the tie that binds. Because you're mine, I walk the line. Oh yeah, walking the line for a very, very good cause. You know, Johnny Cash had 800 or 900 songs. I'm just going to do one more because that's all we got time for. And if you got a song you want to hear, just write it down on a piece of paper, put it in your back pocket, and sit on it, okay? Love is a burning thing, and it makes a fiery ring. Bound by a wild desire, I fell into a ring of fire. I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down, 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 and the flames went higher. And it burns, 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 the ring of fire, the ring of fire. into a burning ring of fire. I went down, 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 and the flames went higher. And it burns, 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 the ring of fire, the ring of fire. I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down, 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 and the flames went higher. And it burns, 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 the ring of fire, the ring of fire. It burns, 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 the ring of fire, the ring of fire, the ring of fire, the ring of fire.
Give it up for Rock Harley, everybody. That is fantastic. Johnny Cash. So nice. We're going to have, in just a couple of minutes, another video. And then we're going to bring back the look with special guest Charlie Martin doing a song. So they worked out a song. And we're going to have that. And then Vinny from Sponge will be coming up, along with more guest speakers. But right now, I'd like to bring on a good friend. He is a big part of what's happening here tonight. He's one of the organizers, along with Brian Major and myself. But him and Brian, Roger Berghoff and Brian, were there at the morgue to identify John. And it was very difficult. And it left a lasting impression, I'm sure, on those guys forever. When I got the call, Roger was in tears. One of his best friends, and by the way, he was the co-announcer with John at the Oxford High School hockey games when they called the games for the school. So I'd like to bring on Roger Berghoff to say a few words, please. Give him a great round of applause, too.
You know, everyone is saying a lot of great things about John. I'm the guy that busts his balls. You know, we've all been through things in life, and you got to have someone that tells the truth to you. So, I got to put my glasses on. I met O'Leary in the early 80s when he worked at WILS up in Lansing. He came up and he was my boss. I was a producer, helped him produce a morning show. John was not a great first impression for radio. You know, he was a professional at what he did. It's always what you do behind the scenes. He taught me how to take records and take them and sell them to the local record store. So John lasted about a year at the station. We had an incident where they remodeled the studio and they put these chunks of concrete, like 10 to 20 foot down in the ground, so the turntables would never skip. Well, management came in one day, and on the top of the turntables were all these scratches. And they blamed him for doing a bunch of cocaine on top of the turntables. It wasn't him, it was me and the overnight guy, but John took the blame. John and I always stayed in contact after he left Lansing. He moved back to Island Park. We both love going to Tiger games. We love going to Red Wings games. The most weirdest thing was sitting on top of his house watching the Detroit fireworks. That was pretty cool. John went back to work at WLLZ, calls me up, says, "Hey man, come on down to a hockey game." I come down, having a great time. I go up to the top of the Joe. Their Wheels had a suite where there's free booze, free food, frickin' unbelievable. Most places you go to an event like this and there's a line to get in the bathroom. But in the back of the Wheels suite, in the bathroom, there was lines on the toilet. After the second game, I had to move to Detroit. You know, there's a lot of people in this room and a lot of people we've talked to that says John's the reason why they got into radio. John's the reason why I got out of radio. I couldn't handle the insanity of all that and the insanity of O'Leary. But without O'Leary, I would have never been able to work with some of the greatest musicians on planet Earth. I got to travel around the country, put on some of the coolest events you could ever imagine. I got to work with ZZ Top. I got to become members of the Seeger family and even the Eagles. So I've had a pretty good life, and it's based on John. All right, for those of you that can't hear me, you're not missing anything. Being around John was not always easy. He was a pain in the ass. We had an old friend named Bill Greenhall that called John the insane one. If you were at the end of the night around John and the party ended, he was not always the happiest. He loved when that party kept on going. John and I also did the Oxford hockey, which they just said. Had a great time with it. It was great watching kids grow up and become men. So if you knew John, he was always scamming something. You know, and one thing he'd always ask for was drinks. And he always asked for rum and Coke. So I bought one last rum and Coke. I hate rum and Coke, but I bought one and I'm going to drink it. And also, I just wanted to say thank you guys for coming. It's been a great night. And we look forward to showing you the rest of the show. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger, and thank you for everything.
Sorry I could not attend John's memorial today. John was a longtime friend, a great guy with a heart of gold. He's a huge loss to our community, a Detroit rock legend. He's gone, but will never be forgotten. May God bless his soul. Rest in peace, my friend.
Well, we'd like to send out our prayers and condolences to Mr. John O'Leary in his peaceful transition a while back. He was a great friend for 30, 40 years. He played on DJ at all the top stations in the city. And when I remember, he was never angry every time. I never seen John angry in all those
with anybody.
years. You know, and he was always a happy guy. And so now he's up in that big station in the sky, you know, WJES US 95, spinning for Big J in St. Peter.
WGOD.
I tell you, John, you're hanging with all the big dogs now. You got Hendrix up there, and Ginger Baker, and Mitch Mitchell, and Janis Joplin, and James Brown. You ought to be having a party time, baby. So, I want you to reach for the stars, and I want you to throw some stardust down on us whenever you get a chance. Much love, brother.
daddy-o, the radio, the platter-pushing papa, the boss man, the tail dragger, the gangster of love, the pharmacist of funk, the high sheriff of rock and roll in Detroit, the Motor City, the man who made it all happen on the airwaves. I'm talking about John O'Leary. God bless you, John. This is Tino G, and I want you to rest in power, my friend. It's a job well done, buddy, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace.
Hi, I'm Lee Arnold. I wish I could be with you guys tonight, but I can't. I hired John when I was program director at WLLZ, Detroit's Wheels, back in the mid-'80s. A better hire I have never had. John was not only a great addition to our air staff with his natural style and his heritage credentials, but he became quickly a great addition to my life. We have remained lifelong true friends ever since. I will miss John with all my heart and soul. My only consolation as a practicing Buddhist is I know we will be together again, lifetime after lifetime. Until then, dear John, I miss you, and thanks for being a true friend, something that John was to most everybody that thinks of him as a friend. John was a true friend. He never forgot you. He never forgot things that you did together or did for each other. He was a mensch, and it's just horrible that he's not here with us anymore. And to all my old friends there in Detroit, hi to all of you. Miss you. Please stay safe.
All right, as the video screen comes up, we've got a special guest to bring back. Charlie Martin is going to do a song with The Look, and then we've got Vinny coming out. I want to remind you about the auction because we're going to shut that down and call the names at 9, so it'll probably be done about 1:45, and the 50-50 raffle is going on right now, so please contribute to that. We're going to pull that at 8:30. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Dave Edwards, The Look with Charlie Martin.
These guys, The Look, the original plan was for them to do their little set, and I was going to come up and do another song with them. And then they got kicked out. But see, the reason why I got them back up here is because I had a little bit I wanted to do, like how ironic it was that they had me sing a song right after Dave sings a song, You Can't Sit Down. So I had to write another song in response. Help, I'm falling and I can't get up. Oh, help, I'm falling and I can't get up. Okay, that's my little bit there. I wrote a whole song and I actually emailed Dave some of the lyrics. He said, wow, that sounds great. Put the whole thing together. We'll do it. Anyway, so we're going to do a song by one of my very significant influences and inspirations in the very early days of rock and roll when I was not even 10 years old. And I'm talking about my favorite holy man, the Reverend Little Richard Penniman. And also, my favorite taco salesman. I was really heartbroken when they knocked him and put that hairless chihuahua in there. I mean, what's the hell? Anyway, so we're going to do this thing called Long, Tall, Sally.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, I'm gonna tell Aunt Mary about Uncle John. She crazy as a misery, but I have a lot of fun, baby. Yeah, baby. Baby, have me some for the night. Well, so John, we love you, tall Sally. The son of Mary coming, so they can pick it in, baby. Yeah, baby. Baby, have me some for the night. One more. Well,
Thank you so much.
Hi, this is Mike Skill. This is for John. We're going to miss you. And I'm thinking back to when Romantics were playing around Detroit in the middle of winter. You coming out and announcing us, introducing us at the show. And I'm 5'8", and John, you come on stage, you're 6'5". We look like little munchkins. But all good times, and you supported us and helped us along our way. And we're going to miss you. And condolences to your friends and family. And we love you. And take it from there. We'll keep moving.
By the way, I want to thank Peter Wolf. I texted Peter the other night and told him about what happened to John. He was very upset about it. John O'Leary was probably his biggest proponent here in Detroit when it came to the music and the band. And I want to thank him for his video. Also, Mike Skill from the Romantics. So many people reached out. It was almost overwhelming, so I thank them for that. And once again, thank all of you for coming out, and not only coming out, but staying all this time and being such a part of this event tonight.
A lot more videos to come.
Yeah, there are more videos coming. And once again, we'll also be drawing the winners for the auction items and for the 50-50 raffle. So thank you in advance for participating in that as well. And I think I'm going to need a day off tomorrow. Tell Trudy she can do both shows. He helped us out whenever we needed him when I was with WCSX. He helped us out whenever I needed him when we were both doing a little country when I was with Nash FM. And now he's here tonight to help out once again. Would you please put your hands together? Welcome one of the best of the Motor City, Vinny Dombrowski from Sponge, everybody.
How y'all doing?
Honey, will you help her? She seems to be looking for answers. You see, Mary, please, Mama, will you help her? Where's the question that cold answer? Like, why does she feel all dead on the inside? Every child she remembers feeling alright. Who was that man that made my mother cry all night? Was that my father? Who was my father? You see, Mary, please, honey, will you help her? She seems to be looking for answers. You see, Mary, please, Mama, will you help her? Where's the question that cold answer? Like, why does she feel all dead on the inside? Every child she remember feeling alright. Who was it, man, that made my mother cry alright? Was that my father? Who was my father? She always feels so all alone. Why was there never a man at home? And will I end up like my mother, by myself, with no other, yeah. You seem very pleased, honey, will you help her? And with a question that go unanswered, still naked in the bath, cigarette stains on your hand, wilted flowers in a vase. I asked, how are you? I see your lipstick on your glass. I think you're drunk, I start to laugh. And on your note the letters read, said I loved you, baby I loved you. Don't ask why, 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 don't ask why. 16 candles down the drain. I love it when you make noise like that. I watch you pass down for a while. I touch your face, you start to smile. On your load is my reply. I wish I loved you, I wish I loved you. Don't ask why, 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 don't ask why. 16 candles down the drain, down the drain, the drain, 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 the drain, the drain. Don't ask why, 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 don't ask why. 16 candles down the drain, down the drain, the drain, 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 the drain, the drain, the drain. We got time for one or two more. Thank you so much. It's good to see you. Where are you from? Pontiac. Make some noise for all the Pontiac people here today. I grew up on the east side of Detroit. 6 Mile and Gratiot. East side. Wrote this next song in Detroit. Some dream I made up. Oh, I guess this is
say a prayer for me. Say a prayer for me. Say a prayer for me. Buried by the sound of a world of human wreckage. In a world of human wreckage. In a world of human wreckage. Yeah, we're lost and we're found and we can't touch the ground. We're out into the sound, to the sound. To see wide open with a hand that's broken. Hear a life on a tragedy. Have you plowed me under the ground that covers the business that is the thing. For us, say a prayer for us. Say a prayer for us. Say a prayer for us. Buried by the sound of a world of human wreckage. In a world of physical wreckage. In a world of financial wreckage. Yeah, well, I'm lost and I'm found and I can't touch the ground. I'm proud into the sound. Yeah, well, I'll wake up some dream I made up. Oh, I guess this is reality. I'm gonna play one more song for y'all. We got a brand new Sponge record out right now. After nearly 30 years, we're still making records, so this is called Stitch. In your bed of conversation, my eyes won't keep. Need a focus on your sleight of hand, your magic lucky numbers, your deafening lullaby. Your message is your madness, perfect in your lies. Though I'm grown weary, yeah, I won't stumble, and storm worries a brighter day. So steers my eyes open wide to the sun. Who am I to blame? Who am I to shame? Steers my eyes open wide to the sun. Who am I to blame? Who am I to shame? Or rock me to sleep like some scarecrow in the movies and poppy fields, in a battleground of flowers. You keep my thoughts arrested, estranged from the truth. Long shadows fly, come morning, long in the truth. Oh, I've grown weary, yeah, I won't stumble, and so reaps the brighter day. So stirs my eyes open wide to the sun. Who am I to blame? Who am I to shame? Stirs my eyes open wide to the sun. Who am I to shame? Who am I to blame? Though I've grown weary, yeah, I won't stumble, and so reaps a brighter day. So stirs my eyes open wide to the sun. Who am I to blame? Who am I to shame? Who am I to change?
Thank you all so much. Now I'd like to bring on a couple of good friends of John's. Scott Brown and Greg St. James. Sheila, how are you, girl? Thank you for coming. Oh, all right, there you go, Greg.
Thank you very much, sir.
How you doing, Token? Welcome to the Westland Old Disc Jockeys Retirement Home. My name is Greg St. James. We'll be serving the Jell-O and Ovaltine shortly. Let me tell you something real quick here. I met John O'Leary in 1977. It was up at the Michigan Jam somewhere on the west side of Michigan. Steve Costan introduced me, and I said, oh my God, I met a radio star, and John said, you sure as fuck just did. Years later, I started a little station with this guy, and somewhere in the house is Kelly Brown. Where's Kelly Brown? Where's Kelly Brown? Where's Kelly Brown? We started a radio station across the border in Windsor called 89X. And for some reason, I decided it'd be a good idea to bring John over there with us. And we had a guy named Vince Canova, was our music director from San Diego. And John was the oldest guy. He was a couple years older than me, so Vince named him Pops. So we used to call him Pops O'Leary. But I want to tell you something. I spent the last 22 years in Washington, D.C., working on Capitol Hill for a TV network, and you know what we do down there? We tear people apart. We say, you got to be over here, you got to be over here, you got to be over there. But you know what John believed in, and what I believe in, and what you and I and all of us believe in? We believe in the power of rock and roll. We believe in the power of music. I'm going to paraphrase that great American philosopher, Mr. Dave Edwards, who once said, let's forget all the little side trips. I want to be your friend. John was everybody's friend. He loved George Harrison. George Harrison, you ever look at that album, the one where he looks like the Travelocity gnome on the front? It says, all things must pass. Well, all things do pass. That's right. But John, wherever the fuck you are, I hope there's a house party going on. John O'Leary, everybody. John O'Leary. Please welcome my friend, a man who still wears the shirt and it still fits the same way it did 30 years ago, Mr. Scott Brown.
Greg St. James, everybody. Greg St. James. So I met John O'Leary back in 1992 when Greg hired him on to do Afternoon Drive at 89X. And I'll be the one guy who, this won't be like John was the greatest guy in the world speech. I'll give a little truth to it. John had a little problem with personal hygiene, and we all know that, but it was good. So there was a big snowstorm, just a tiny problem, right? Big snowstorm here in the U.S., and John had to get to his shift at 89X across the border, and he was stuck without a car at 6 Mile and Woodward. How many times have you guys all heard that, right? So I had a Bronco and a four-wheel drive, and so I drove down with my wife, and we met him on the 6 Mile. It's right near Woodward, and there he was, comes peeling out. He's got snow on his boots, and his socks are he's a wreck, okay? So he hops in the car, and the very first thing he does is pulls his shoes off and puts them under the heater duct. And then he takes his socks off and put them on the defroster. So then he put his feet under the heating duct. And he goes, "Oh man, thank God you're here. This is so warm." And we were like, "Thank you, John." So we drove him all the way over to Canada. He made his shift. As a matter of fact, he ended up staying on the air for 12 hours that night because nobody else could make their shift. And that's the kind of guy John O'Leary was. Loved to help out others, and I'm glad he made it to a shift that day, and my nose has since recovered. Thank you, John.
And that is why the K95 mask was invented, ladies and gentlemen. That's exactly why.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. John O'Leary, this one's for you, brother.
Yeah, we got a few more guests. Greenman Scott Randall's here from the Riff. And Brian Major will be out to give all the thank yous out. And then we will wrap it up with Mob Opera.
Hey, Token Lounge. How you doing? Thanks for coming, everybody. I know we're all missing Johnny Boy. Whew. Very special man. Sorry I couldn't be here with you. Nice to see all. The old DJs there, don't trip over their walkers there in the corner. Be careful. A lot of great times with Johnny. His dedication to radio, to the people in radio, but most importantly to the people who listened to the radio, who came to the shows, and the bands that made the music. He was authentic, and I miss him a lot. And wrote a little tune for him.
Everybody, put your hands together for the 89X portion of the show. I think these guys are around way before 89X, but I think they were on the beat way before 89X. Put your hands together for C. Dick Run.
But it's passed you by. told a few white lies to me. You told a few to me. You're on your own now, a little unexpectedly. You don't know a good thing when you got it. You give up a good thing, you don't try. You don't know a good thing when you got it. You'll be looking for the good thing till you die. You could have tried to stay by my side, but you sit and cry till daybreak. Now it's cold outside, and you wonder why you chose to go it all alone, babe. You told a few lies to me. You told a few to me. You're on your own now, a little unexpectedly. You don't know a good thing when you got it. You give up a good thing, you don't try. You don't know a good thing when you got it. You'll be looking for the good thing till you die. You told a few white lies to me. You're on your own now, a little unexpectedly. You don't know a good thing when you got it. You give up a good thing, you don't try. You don't know a good thing when you got it. You'll be looking for the good thing till you die. You'll be looking for that good thing. 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 Thank you very much. We're C. Dick Run. Obviously, they gave us a great introduction. Thank you very much. I think it's gonna take some time for me to get you off my mind. I saw your smiling face today, yet I know you're far away. No need to cry myself to sleep. we had, we'll have forever. Forever I'll remember you. Don't even cry myself to sleep. I don't look back without a breeze. Oh, the things that we had, we'll have forever. Forever I'll remember you. Forever I'll remember you. Forever I'll remember you. Forever I'll remember you. Forever I'll remember you.
Thank you very much.
It's time for the 5 o'clock bus to stop again. When she's standing on the corner by the downtown bar, you wish instead of hopping on the bus you jumped in your car. Well, she don't even know you, but she can make you a fool. Like a young boy out of some standing in high school. Well, it happens every day of my walking to 5. I tremble and I sweat 'cause I'm waiting for the 5 o'clock bus stop. 5 o'clock bus stop. 5 o'clock bus stop. 5 o'clock bus stop. Well, I'm staring out the window. I
So let's bring on Dave Cook. He's going to talk about the WIQB years when John went to WIQB.
Thank you, Doug. Good evening. Full disclosure, I never actually worked with John at IQB. I actually left there a few months before they made the change. And so I'm going to relate a story that was related to me from John. And for anybody that's in radio, you're probably familiar. Well, we all do the voice tracking when we can't be live. Like if you got to cut out and introduce a band or something, you record the last couple hours of your show. You voice track your breaks. So I'm pulling the veil off radio. Anyway, John was apparently less than enamored with the technology required to do voice tracking, so he never wanted to do it. And Mark Thompson, you might know from Wheels and Riff, he was at IQB. He put the band back together. Mark Addy and John O'Leary and Bob Bauer and some names that some of you might know. Anyway, he kept telling John he wanted him to try to voice track. Can you guys hear me okay? I could get a little... Not at all? Oh, I'm sorry. How about now? Oh, okay. So I'm telling the story of when John was at IQB. He was less than enamored with the technology required to voice track. But the program director, Mark Thompson, wanted him to do this. So he kept encouraging him to voice track. So he said he came into his office one day, and John's on the air, and Mark's in the office, and John O'Leary came in. He said, "Hey, Mark, I have," if you know how John talked, the Edward R. Murrow delivery, and real serious, and he said, "Mark, I've finally mastered the voice tracking. I've done one." And he goes, Great, when did you do it?" He goes, "I've done the next break." And he said, "Great, let's sit down and listen to it." So they were sitting in Mark's office, and the break was coming up. And he said John's sitting there all proud and happy that they're about to hear his first voice-tracked break. And he came on and did the break and finished it off with, on Rock 103, WIQB. Oh, fuck. And if you know voice track, well, here's the hint. When you do a voice, you can do it as many times as you want. You make a mistake, you just take two. The key, though, is you have to set the cue to start the song and end the break. Otherwise, it'll keep rolling through whatever was there. And if your last mistake was a few seconds longer, which the fuck was, it was still there, and he didn't cut the... So he was proud of himself for finally doing a voice track, but he missed that one little thing. And as Doug could relate, as a program director, can you imagine sitting there and hearing that? It's just perfect. Anyway, that's my John O'Leary story. So WIQB days. Thanks.
All right, and now let's bring on our good friend, Screaming Scott Randall.
How y'all doing tonight? I'll try to keep this short because the edibles are just about to kick in. But thank each and every one of you for coming out. A big round of applause. Doug Podell, John Bobby, and the crew that put this incredible thing together in such a short period of time. I mean, also. I didn't actually work with John, but we worked in the same building. When I was over at WRIF, he was over across the hall at WCSX. And working the overnights shift, he'd always come up and tell me, "Scott, I've got some extra pork rinds for you." I was like, he always had the worst eating. The junk food king was John O'Leary. Ken Calvert alluded to it earlier in the earlier video. Bags of chips, pork rinds. He'd eat the canned cheese right out of the thing and then eat the chips. But to tell you, there's an unseen rule in radio, okay? At exactly 5:01 p.m., the DJs get all the food that the salespeople left for the day. So here was the story. I came into work, didn't get my dinner, and I thought I'll open the fridge and wow, here's a whole plate of lasagna. A whole thing, a whole pan. This thing had to be freaking 30 pounds of lasagna, right? So I'm thinking, it's like, phew, I am all set for the night. Didn't see John at all, right? So, again, with DJs, you have to grab it fast because it's gone. And that's just what happened. We have these security cameras at the radio station. I'm sitting about, man, I'm getting hungry. I think I'll go get me some lasagna. So I go to the fridge and, what the fuck? It's gone. There was a whole freaking tray of lasagna here and it's gone. So I get back to the Riff studio, right? I look at the studio to the corner of my eye. Here's John O'Leary with the Olympic theme in the background. Taking that whole frickin' tray of lasagna to his car. I got none. You son of a bitch! John was always great with rock and roll. The last conversation I had with John was for the Rolling Stones show. He had contacted me and asked me if I was going. And I said, hey, the family fund say no. Used to be a time when DJs would get free tickets, but John always found a way to get into a concert. Even he got into backstage of Jay Giles after he had left WCSX. He had left CSX, but still had his laminates. So subsequently, backstage, John slipped back there, and him and Peter Werby were just tried true friends. They just, at any time. And Aerosmith, always around Aerosmith, and he was such a kind and gentle guy. When I got laid off after COVID, John was probably one of the first guys that called me up on the phone and said, hey, I'm sorry. I always had this saying, but John Bobby, you got the shot ready? Oh my God, okay. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, please indulge me right now by putting up your glasses right now to a toast to John O'Leary. John said a lot of different phrases, but this is the one he exactly told me when I got laid off for a short period of time. He said, Scott, radio people never lose their job. They just find another way to find some music. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me have a John O'Leary. Cheers, John. We love you. And one more thing on John, before they pulled the Apollo hook off the stage. John and me had one thing in common, besides the junk food and all that. John, believe it or not, I mean, all the DJs here had such wonderful, wonderful memories with John, you know, from Doug to Steve Costin to Trudy and all that. John and I had one thing in common that he called me constantly, is John and I shared the love of having kidney stones. So, this looks really great. All the DJs here tonight have warm, wonderful stories. Yet John and I talked about our penises and rocks coming through them. It was just, you'd call 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Oh, Scott, I passed that stone. But the last story, John, when I formed this real cheesy cover band, we did a WCSX promotion where my band was playing for St. Patrick's Day. Well, he had to call me up and, Scott, I heard you have a band called Shit. He's like, no, John, it's not pronounced shit. It's pronounced shit. You got to make sure because you got to announce it on the radio. Why would you call a band Shit? Are you that bad? It's like, no, the band is called Chit with a C. It's Chit. But again, thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming out. Again, tip your bartenders and all that. We still got some more tributes coming your way. And again, a big round of applause to everybody that put this together. This is simply amazing. Thank you, Detroit.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Bones. First time I ever heard John O'Leary on the air was when he was one of the original air aces at WABX radio station that I got turned on to very early by my father. You could immediately tell John was a huge fan of what he was doing and just music in general. He had great passion for it. And he was such a kind soul, very, very kind soul, very, very supportive of, the local music scene, the Detroit music scene, and all the bands playing clubs. And there was many shows that I was even involved with early on in the clubs. John would be there, and he'd be rooting us on and hanging out and having a great time. John was everything that was cool about the airwaves, about radio, about rock and roll in Detroit, and about humanity in general. So thank you, John, for all of the great many hours on the airwaves you gave us and all the support that you've given to musicians over the time, and being such a great fellow. Rock on, John O'Leary.
I want to introduce to you Brian Major. Brian was the man who really spearheaded this whole event tonight. I know a lot of thanks came to me, and we all worked together, but this was the man right here. He was very close to John, and he was the man that actually had to do the horrific task of identifying John. And I know it's going to leave an indelible effect on him forever. But Brian, thank you so much for all the hard work. Thank you for putting this together, for working with the bands, the videos, the every single thing. The lineup, the way it was handled tonight, everything went through this man right here. We've known him from Arts, Beats, and Eats and so many great events that he's handled. Give a great round of applause for Brian Major tonight, everyone.
This goes out to you guys. Is this an audience or an oil painting? Make some noise! Before we go, I do want to say a few things. First and foremost, the preliminary examination for the man who's responsible for us being here tonight is scheduled for February 6th. Stay tuned. There will be more. You will see more about this posted. I do want to let everybody know, and I want to allay your fears, a local funeral director has stepped up to claim the body and handle the cremation. We will be scattering John's ashes at every one of the haunts that he emceed, from Pine Knob down to IROC, Harpo's, here at the Token. We will videotape it. It will be the ending to the video of everything that's transpired tonight. We will make it available to all of you. Just keep an eye on the website and the Facebook pages. I definitely want to thank my partner, Roger Bergdorf and Doug Podell. They say I made it happen. I say they made it happen. All the media that supported us, especially thank you to John Anton and John Bobby and the staff here at the Token, Kimberly and Alice, Art Volo. We sweated for the last 2 days putting all that video together. He's a genius. My wife for putting up with me for my absence during these preparations, and a special thanks to all of you for joining us. Last but not least, I want to thank John. You can't forget John. He will not let you forget him. He brought us all here together tonight, and I guarantee you, you can visualize this. He's standing at the gates and telling St. Peter, you know, I am a disc jockey. Ladies and gentlemen, my partner Roger Bergdorf, he was going to tell you a little bit about Oxford hockey, which is the reason why we chose to donate all the proceeds. Roger, take it away.
First off, thanks for being here. Secondly, John loved hockey. That was our connection. We did broadcasting together, so when it was our time, we got asked to do high school hockey on cable TV. We had a great time. We loved watching the kids grow up. That's our connection to Oxford, and everything, it has to be about John. In his world, it's about John. So this night, John would want something good to happen out of Oxford. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you.
We are just about done with the memorial. I do, as Brian said, want to thank my wife because I promised her I wouldn't do another one of these, and here we are. But whatever it takes to get it done, that's what we do. On behalf of Brian, Roger, and myself, and for everybody who participated in this event tonight, for all of you who came out tonight, for all of the bands, all of the celebrities and videos, and all the radio personalities who didn't get in any fights tonight at all here, including me, for not bringing up the fact that I may have fired one or two of them. On behalf of all of us, our hearts go out to you and to John O'Leary. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Knockdown, throwdown, party at the Token Lounge. Baby!
So you're a little bit older and a lot less bolder than you used to be. So you used to shake 'em down, but now you stop and think about your dignity. So now sweet 16's turned 31. Get the feeling weary when the workday's done. Well, all you got to do is get up and into your kick. If you're in a fit, come back, baby. Rock and roll never forgets.
Every song I played, you know it made me feel better. And every time I play my favorite song, in my headphones sing along, I played it to you. I played it to you. Living on the air, what I'm doing now. Thank you all for coming, living on the air, what I'm doing now. I'm so alive, I'm so alive, living on the air, living on the air. I'm so alive, I'm so alive. I might have died alone, but I was never afraid. Married to the music was a choice that I made. Spent my life spinning all your favorite hits in my sneaker shirt from where the DJ sits, rocking the city that I knew so well. Got so many stories for my soul to tell. Spent eternity on the radio wave, between the stations and your homes where your radio plays. Living on the air, that's what I'm doing now. Living on the air, living on the air, living on the air. that perilous day. Now I come to you all, give thanks and praise. For years that you listened to me on the station, you made my life sweeter the entire duration. I lived my whole life for the wisdom of voices. I stand by so proudly of all of my choices. And now I bow as the final curtain is closing. I pray you find joy in the love